This podcast discusses external research, products, and views not endorsed by CSIRO. Please use your own judgment before relying on it. Visit csiro.au/everyday-AI for more.
CSIRO acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which this podcast was created. We pay our deepest respects to elders past and present, and to First Nations scientists, storytellers, and listeners.
I've been to some big fires where it's very terrifying and you just have to focus on the tasking that you've been given. And then I've also been to some smaller bushfires where you just get in and put it out before it becomes one of those bigger fires.
Chantelle O'Brien has had a long career fighting and managing bushfires. These days, she predicts how a fire will spread based on weather patterns and local landscapes. Accurate predictions help put firefighters in the right place and at the right time and get information out quickly.
Sometimes where the weather forecast is of high confidence and the fuel state and condition is well known, there is high confidence in being able to predict a fire, and it can feel relatively straightforward. However, sometimes we're operating in an environment of high uncertainty, which makes predicting a fire a lot more ambiguous and the predictions become a lot harder.
50 years ago, these predictions took hours and involved maps, paper, and pens. But today, a CSIRO tool that uses AI helps fire managers do their jobs much faster and more efficiently.
Typically, those piece of paper and pencil predictions would take about an hour. Spark can do a quick prediction and you can get a warning out within about 10 minutes.
AI is becoming a familiar tool in many workplaces, from factories to finance, raising questions about the future of work. So what does the future hold? Will human workers, even firefighters or weather forecasters, become redundant? Is artificial intelligence coming for our jobs?
Hello there.
The Eagle has landed.
The CSIRO team,
What can I do for you?
the machines in the factories, producing a computer program.
So far away. Temperature is approaching 500 degrees Celsius.
Beautiful. I've answered all your questions.
They can provide an attractive solution to tomorrow's energy needs.
I'm John Whittle, an AI expert from CSIRO, Australia's national science agency. And this is Everyday AI, a podcast that looks at how artificial intelligence is changing our daily lives. This season, we explore how people are using AI across different life stages, from the cradle to the grave. And most importantly, we lift the lid on how the technology actually works. In this episode, we're looking at the workplace, where AI is rapidly changing how we do our jobs. When it comes to AI at work, we often focus on the things AI can do for us, rather than what it can do with us. Artificial intelligence took over my workplace a long time ago, not in a robot uprising kind of way. But I studied artificial intelligence back in 1995, and now AI is my career. We'll learn more from Chantelle about firefighting and AI soon. Plus, we'll unpack the impact of AI on productivity and hear how it's changing the skills employers are looking for. But before we get to productivity, let's consider creativity. Can AI be our partner in overcoming a creative block? This Australian company is exploring this very question.
My name is Bhautik Joshi. I'm a principal applied scientist at Canva, and my role here is building tools for creative people to use to express themselves creatively.
Canva is an online graphic design platform that launched in Perth in 2013. It now has more than 130 million users worldwide.
We've seen a big growth recently in people using Canva in the workplace, the way that they'd use the suite of sort of like office tools anyways. And a lot of that came out from where we started really, which was people were using Canva at home, so they'd make posters or flyers or to make things that they were going to print or making cards. So it was sort of this natural bridge between that and using it at work.
Canva has a range of design functions, from documents and presentations to videos and social media posts. And a lot of these functions are powered by AI.
Magic Studio is this enormous suite of tools.
Despite the name, it's not magic. It's just everyday AI. Bhautik explains one of the Magic Studio tools called Magic Write. Say you're stuck on an email, a report, or a passion project. Let's say it's about ferrets.
You give it an instruction and say, look, can you give me a couple of ideas about where to start? Can you give me a couple of ferret facts that I can start with? And then from there, you can write out your paragraphs. And then if you don't like the wording, if you want to make a paragraph, say a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, you can then come back to Magic Write and say, okay, right, can you adjust this text for me?
And now you want to illustrate your ferret story. Another AI tool can generate images for you based on your text prompts.
So you give it a prompt and you get a bunch of pictures of ferrets back, but then you could run it through the rest of our tools then to sort of make it work with the design. Like you could take your picture of the ferret that you've generated, then we'd run the background remover. And then the background remover is another piece of very conventional AI that's been on for a really long time. Then, you've got this ferret sticker that you can then stick into your design, right? And that's, if you like an AI end-to-end workflow.
These kinds of AI tools aren't new, and similar versions are readily available online. They started as fun tools, but being fast and relatively easy to use means they've transferred easily to professional settings. Bhautik uses them himself.
So I tend to write quite formally. So sometimes I actually need some help to write casually. So I'll use, for example, like a tool like Magic Write to sort of help bring the tone down and be a bit less formal and be a little bit more accessible.
The appeal of these AI-powered tools is that they save time. Say you want to add more background to a photo. You can tell the AI to expand the image, and it'll fill in the missing bits in seconds, something that would usually take a human designer ages. Many image or text generators rely on us to prompt them with specific instructions, like draw a family of ferrets. But some tools can now offer suggestions without explicit prompts.
These models are clever. They've been trained on millions of pictures, and they've kind of got this sleeping representation of the world, right? And that's really interesting because you don't necessarily need prompts to be able to access that.
Bhautik's team experimented with AI interaction beyond relying on prompts.
We did a lot of experimentation. We did a lot of testing. We had a lot of bad results. When we expanded it out, most of the time, the thing that it would generate was picture frames. And, that's cool. That's not what you want, right? You wanted to sort of expand the pictures. There is some fundamental research that you need to do to be able to sort of make it so that it mostly works, right? But then what you can do is that you can get that extra 50%. You can get that last chunk of the way there by really tuning what it's doing. Really getting in there and under the hood and really just adjusting the knobs and the dials until it works in a way that is reliable and reproducible.
And sure enough, after some fine-tuning, it started expanding images. How exactly does it work? Well, that's not so easy to answer.
Will we eventually be able to understand this? Yes. But do we currently understand how it works? Not 100%. Just the other day, we were doing some testing and we had this picture. It was just of an interior of a room. And just on the left-hand side of the room, there was just a little bit of a light kick. It was brighter on one side and it was darker on the other. And when we expanded it out to landscape, on that area where it had the light kick, it hallucinated a very convincing set of windows. And then the shadows were all then going completely in the correct direction. It was dramatic. So I'll sit down with our pattern folks and we'll write out like a block diagram of what happens. And then there's a box in the middle and it's just kind of got a blank label on it. And, the patent lawyers will have a look at it and say, okay, so what happens here? And it's I don't know. It's magic.
While Bhautik might not be able to explain the exact inner workings of the blank box, we do know the general principles. The AI is trained on large data sets relevant to the task, like images or design elements. The AI model looks at what you input, like a text prompt or an image you upload. Then it identifies patterns based on its training. Using these patterns, the AI generates design suggestions. Bhautik sees a key strength of AI in the workplace. He says its speed allows people to play with ideas, potentially finding inspiration through exploration. No matter your field, there's a good chance AI is already playing a supporting role. From GPS navigation guiding your deliveries to the grammar checker in your emails. Even here on this podcast, tasks like transcription, editing suggestions, and audio cleanup have all been aided by AI tools. Most commonly, AI's strengths are in handling repetitive or data-heavy tasks. This can potentially free up human workers for more strategic work. Take customer service chatbots. They can address simple routine inquiries, allowing human agents to focus on complex customer interactions. A recent study from the US National Bureau of Economic Research suggested that with AI assistance, customer service agents could answer 14% more calls while maintaining customer satisfaction. But are AI tools the ultimate productivity hack, freeing us up for more strategic or creative pursuits? Or are they just contributing to information overload?
Well, I think it's interesting to think about AI in the context of it's a general tool that we have available that we can do a bunch of different things with. Some things it'll help us do more efficiently and it'll be helpful and productive. And it can also help us do a lot of things that potentially aren't as productive or aren't as beneficial. And it's about figuring out where are the areas where AI is the right tool that's going to provide those benefits, and also figuring out where there's ways that we can potentially look at other tools that might be more appropriate.
This is Claire Naughtin. She leads the Digital Futures team at CSIRO's Data 61. Her team helps organizations understand the long-term impacts of technologies like AI. There's a term that keeps coming up when discussing artificial intelligence that I want to address. Let's talk about productivity. So, Australia is well known to be in a period of declining productivity. It's got a 60-year low in labour productivity right now. That's true as well of many developed countries across the world. Can you just remind the listeners, why is it necessary to increase productivity?
So when we think about productivity in our job, it's effectively the value that we could generate, the outputs we could generate, the time that we spend in our work. We want it to be leading to outcomes that are beneficial for the organisation, for us as professionals, for us in terms of the broader communities potentially that we're looking to serve through our work. So if we're spending 7-8 hours each day at work, we want it to be high value work. And effectively, if we can spend that same amount of time but produce more, that's effectively pointing towards that productivity uplift. It might have previously taken me 2 hours to produce a short article. And if I can do that in half an hour by working with a chat assistant that can help me better source that information, that's a productivity gain. It means that additional hour and a half that I've gained in my day could be dedicated towards other higher value tasks, potentially exploring other research areas as I would in my work. Potentially I have the capacity to take on mentoring opportunities or other opportunities that might not have been available to me had I not had that additional time available through my day.
So AI is finally going to let us all lie on the beach and let the robots do all the work for us?
Well, I think there's been a lot of discussion around, well, what happens if we potentially could complete 100% of the work that we would otherwise do in 5 days, in 4 days? And the potential for us to then effectively have an additional day per week where we're not in the office.
The flip side, though, of worker well-being and 4-day work weeks is that, people worry that AI is going to lead to losses in jobs. I was speaking to a copy editor the other day who is saying that he's already losing business and is having to change careers. But more broadly than anecdotal examples, what's the data telling us, or what's the history of the introduction of digital technologies tell us about the impact on jobs?
So I think what we're seeing is for the majority of the workforce, we're likely to all have our work and our jobs impacted and augmented by AI to some extent, in that there'll be parts of our jobs where we'll be starting to use AI tools, starting to use these tools to change the way we do these work tasks that we might have historically done without an AI, with the goal being that these will be the work tasks that are actually making us more productive and making particular work tasks more enjoyable or more achievable for us. And so there is that aspect in terms of pointing towards the need for all workers across Australia to adjust to the augmentation that AI will bring to their jobs. In some cases, that might require new skills and capabilities to use these tools, to get familiar with ChatGPT, to get familiar with Copilot and the other tools that are available, and understand how these could start to be integrated into our work. What we've seen across previous waves of technology change and augmentation across the workforce is that while there is displacement in some parts of the workforce, this also does then create new work opportunities, which, if designed well, can provide the appropriate transition pathways for the workers that might find themselves significantly impacted or in some cases displaced as a result of these changes. Particularly thinking about some of the creative industries, there could be opportunities to diversify into other spaces where there's new creativity gaps that need to be filled, which can't otherwise be filled from an AI perspective.
With AI churning out images, music, and writing, a big question emerges. How will these tools impact artistic expression? To explore this, I put it to Bhautik Joshi.
I think they'll change jobs in the industries, but I don't necessarily think they can replace jobs. But I think it will change the nature of work that people do, and I think it will change where they put their creativity and where they put their focus into.
Bhautik uses the example of rotoscoping. This is a traditional animation technique where animators painstakingly trace video footage, frame by frame, to extract an object from a scene so it can be used with a different background. Staring at hours of footage, meticulously tracing every detail requires incredible focus, and even a tiny slip-up means starting over. Bhautik says AI and machine learning are speeding up rotoscoping.
I'm not going to say it's been 100% taken over by AI, but it gives you a starting point that is much closer to complete than when you'd been sort of like manually drawing polygons or manually erasing pixels around the edge of the object frame by frame. And what that has meant from a practical point of view is that the productivity of people doing rotoscoping has gone up. There's no lack of work. There's always been more work than they've had time to do. And it's taken a job that has been previously very dreadful to sort of making higher level creative decisions.
While AI-generated images continue to get better, they still have a distinct AI-like quality. It's not 100% convincing just yet. This is similar to the evolution of many digital technologies. Remember the special effects in 80s movies like Jaws? They seem dated by today's standards because CGI has come such a long way. Digital transformation doesn't move at a steady, predictable pace. The pandemic triggered a massive shift towards remote work, accelerating digital transformation by years, if not decades, according to some estimates. Claire Naughtin explains what we learned from this period and how it might apply to the AI transformation.
One of the really interesting aspects that we've seen around how remote working has changed our workforce has been the types of skills that they're actively looking to hire. These routine, these repetitive manual tasks tend to be most readily automatable and substituted by technologies such as, rather than picking up a box, we can use machines to do that these days. But it's these uniquely human skills that are critical when it comes to how we interact with each other, how we interact with our customers, with our clients, how we exercise empathy and communicate effectively. Interpersonal skills are amongst the highest and fastest growing skills category across the workforce, the more digitally enabled and the more remote we are in our work. And I think we're likely to see this continue as AI continues to augment and change the way we complete our work as well.
This reminds me of one of my favourite quotes from Minouche Shafik, former director of the London School of Economics. She famously said, "In the past, jobs were about muscles. Now they're about brains. But in the future, they'll be all about the heart." It strikes me that Claire is quite optimistic about the impact of AI on work, but many people are understandably worried about job displacement. So is it really a wholly positive future of employment that we can look forward to?
I think it's fair to say that, over the coming years and decades, like what we've seen with past technology-driven changes across the workforce, we're likely to go through some periods where things are uncomfortable, we might see areas where people need to upskill or identify changes in their jobs that they need to adjust to, and that could be a challenging space to navigate. Given that I am someone that works in a largely consulting and advisory role, I see great opportunities in my ability to use AI to help me brainstorm ideas, to effectively be my co-pilot, co-worker in coming up with great discussion aspects, helping me point out gaps in the research that I've come up with, even helping me proofread those final reports and identify silly typos, and helping me free up more time to spend that time in that interpersonal aspect, in communicating those findings, in translating that work into new spaces.
Claire says some sectors are pioneering the use of AI to address their business challenges. For instance, the retail industry leverages AI to help prevent theft and improve the online shopping experience. But AI can also be used to empower frontline workers in real life and death situations. Our next guest has one such example.
My name's Chantelle O'Brien. I work for AFAC as the bushfire systems specialist. And in this role, I provide expert advice on bushfire-related topics, such as fire behaviour, fuels advice, weather, and how it interacts with fire.
AFAC stands for the Australasian Fire and Emergency Services Authorities Council. Chantelle is a fire management expert and also had a long career as a firefighter on the front lines.
Standing there looking at giant flames, or, even from a distance looking at giant flames and looking at a smoke plume, it is both absolutely, completely and utterly terrifying. But then also something, particularly in my brain, just switches and I'm like, right, I'm in firefighting mode now. I know what I need to do.
Chantelle knows what she needs to do because she and her team have a wealth of expertise in forecasting when, where, and how a fire might spread. But especially as we look to the future of more unpredictable weather patterns, this task is only becoming more challenging.
Climate change is a big influence on the predictability of many things, including the weather, which is then a large influence on fire behaviour. The unpredictability of the weather long term can throw plans for prescribed burning out, which then reduces the preparation for the bushfire season. And then there's also highly localised weather that is extremely hard to predict.
Just 50 years ago, fire managers relied on maps with contour lines on them. It took a lot of skill along with some guesswork to predict how the wind or landscape might determine a fire's path. New technologies have assisted fire managers over the decades, including the one we heard about at the top of the episode, a tool with AI components developed by CSIRO called Spark.
Spark is aiming to make the predictions more reliable so that firefighters can be put in the most appropriate positions, so that warnings can be put out and be a lot more accurate than what they might have been.
It uses data like weather patterns, vegetation types, terrain, and past fires to help predict how a fire might behave.
It helps predict the fire going along the surface of the earth, but then also up into the atmosphere. So predicting where spot fires may land, how they might be propagated, how far the firebrands might fall.
Firebrands are tiny embers created by burning bark and leaves. They get lifted up into the air due to the fire's heat and can sometimes still be alight when they fall back down. But how does Spark, the AI tool, not the firebrand, work?
The front end is the graphic user interface, the GUI, and that runs on a web page. And behind that, we've got the Spark server. So this can run either on a desktop computer or on a cloud platform and allows the running of large volumes of bushfire simulations in the background.
Spark is a fire prediction toolbox. Inside this toolbox, different templates represent how a fire might behave on various surfaces. Spark uses these templates to identify patterns that can help predict how the current fire might behave.
So these are the forest model, grassland model, grassy woodland, spinifex, shrubland, mallee heath, button grass, and pine. Most of the vegetation areas within Australia can be put into one of these models, and the prediction of fire can be done confidently with one of these models.
When a fire starts, a situation officer like Chantelle gets the location. She feeds that information into Spark. Spark then runs a simulation predicting how the blaze might spread. Firefighters report on-the-ground changes in weather or the fire's behavior. Chantelle updates Spark with this real-time data, so the simulation reflects the actual fire.
If you have a creek that's got trees leaning over the top of it, and it's predefined in Spark to be like a 5 metre width, but in actual fact the trees are touching and therefore it's only 1 metre, you can change that so that, yes, even though there's a creek there, the fire will actually jump because the trees are, for all intents and purposes, touching.
Spark is designed to learn and improve as new research becomes available.
So when new science is discovered about the difference that climate change is making, just as an example, on bushfire behaviour, that can be put into Spark.
Being able to pinpoint where and how a fire will burn has very real implications for the natural environment and human lives.
Some of the different use cases for Spark in the fire management industry include emergency response and preparedness. So this is predicting fire spread, and that is mainly to inform response decisions and public warnings. Spark's also intended to assist with the warning maps, so giving more accurate indications of where a fire might impact the public. So that can include issuing watch and act and emergency messages about whether you need to evacuate or whether it's okay to just sit and watch and then act if something changes.
This allows fire managers to pass on information to the public about when to evacuate or the safest routes on which to travel.
And showing where areas of the highest risk might be, or whether there are places like schools or aged care facilities, shopping centres, things like that, that might be in an area which is higher risk, and then they can mitigate that risk. So before a fire even comes along, they can change what is happening around those areas to make them safer.
As we heard at the top of the episode, emergency alerts can reach the public in as little as 10 minutes. In the past, it could have taken hours. And firefighters can be deployed to the safest and most effective locations.
The intention is to make fires smaller than what they potentially could have been if we are targeting where we're putting firefighters a little better.
Using one tool across different agencies streamlines emergency response, whether it's within a state or across state borders.
Fire will not stop at the border. Fire does not respect borders. And I can go from South Australia over into New South Wales and start predicting using Spark because I know how it works.
The potential of Spark is pretty exciting, but how might this technology affect the role of firefighters?
Spark is a tool where you do need to have experience in firefighting. You do need to have experience in the local area or know how a fire is going to react in a forest compared to a grassy woodland. It really does require a human to run it that has that sort of information.
Chantelle says the experience of firefighters is crucial for keeping Spark accurate. Their real-time updates are usually more accurate than regional data. Without human oversight, Spark wouldn't know if firefighters are actively fighting the blaze, and it might overestimate a fire's spread. This is where the human expert's judgment is critical.
The progression in AI at the moment is pretty mind-blowing. But in my personal opinion, I strongly believe that you do need that human input at this stage. That if you see the trees whipping around in a certain way, that, that means this is going to happen next. I don't know that AI would be able to interpret that in the same way that a human brain would. But who knows? Who knows what the future holds?
Spark represents a significant leap forward in fire management. It has the potential to save lives and property, leading to a safer future for communities across the world. While Bhautik isn't putting out fires, he too is positive about the future of AI tools.
As far as the things that we do on a broad level, to be creative, to be expressive, I don't think the order in which we do things will change all that much. right? What will change is how quickly we're able to do them, how big that expression can be. Taking ordinary parts of our workflows that we have and just making them more accessible, making them more equitable, and making them more, well, frankly, quicker. That's an optimistic version of the future that I really hope we get to.
I'm John Whittle. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Everyday AI. Thanks to our guests, Chantelle O'Brien, Bhautik Joshi, and Claire Naughtin. In our next episode, we'll be looking at how AI is impacting parenting and family life, and the challenges we face in guiding our kids to use these new technologies safely.
It's necessary to have those sorts of conversations so that our kids can distinguish between reality or a version of reality and a created one.
Everyday AI Season 2 is a CSIRO series created by me and Nikki Galovich. Alexandra Persley is our supervising producer, and Laura Briley-Newton is our producer and sound engineer from Audiocraft. Script and production support by Jess Hamilton. We'd love to know what you think, so please subscribe to Everyday AI and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts.